This is the story of the very first time I ever called in sick at a full-time job. I had worked there a couple of years, maybe 1 or 2 years, but finally on a Friday morning I woke up and I was just feeling really crappy. And I wanted to call in sick to work, but I'm not a very good actor. So I needed to enhance my performance, I needed to base it on some facts. I didn't have a thermometer. I knew I was running a fever. So I called my girlfriend who lived next door and I said, hey, can I come over and find out if I have a fever or not? She said, sure. Now, the beauty of living on the third floor of a really crappy apartment building is you can climb out your bedroom window, onto the fire escape, jump to her fire escape, climb in her bedroom window, and go in her apartment. I know it sounds dangerous, but when you're young and she's a cute blonde, you do what you gotta do. It was very West Side Story. So I got dressed for work just in case I did not have a fever and had no excuses. Did the whole fire escape trip over. We found out I did have a fever, and she said, you're not going anywhere, least of all jumping fire escapes. You're gonna get them, I'm gonna put you into my bed. I'm going to go to work, I'm going to bring back some soup and some medicine, but you're not going anywhere. Now, I had only been dating her for a couple of months, and we hadn't slept together yet. But the idea of my spending the afternoon in her bed by myself was a step in the right direction, so I said yes. I called into work, very convincingly, took off my shoes, I stayed in my street clothes, she tucked me in and she went to work, and I fell asleep. Now, it must have been 2, maybe 3 hours later, I woke up because I heard a noise. And I opened my eyes and looked, and there at the foot of her bed was a man standing with a big box in his hands looking at me. And when he realized I was awake, he said, you know, I was just thinking how easy it would be for me to kill you. Now, if I wasn't sick before, I was sick now. I had never met her ex-boyfriend, but I had heard about him, and he had broken up with her before I ever met her, and he was supposedly in California. But this guy at the end of the bed was a big guy, so I put 2 and 2 together, and I said, Spike? Now, Spike's not his real name, but for the sake of YouTube and my own safety, let's just call him Spike. And he said, are you screwing her? Now, I saw this as an opening. I whipped back my covers and I sat up so he could see I was in my street clothes. And I said, I'm her next door neighbor and she's taking care of me while I'm sick. And that kind of broke the tension a little bit, and Spike started going back to what he was doing ahead of time. He was going around the apartment looking at various knickknacks and pictures and occasionally put one or two in the big box. And I recognized the big box. It had been sitting on the kitchen floor for months, and it was a box of empty, returnable beer bottles. This is back in the day when you could return empty beer bottles to the distributor, but you'd only get like a nickel a piece. So this guy was carrying this big box around, hoping to make a buck. So I figured I wasn't talking to the brightest star in the sky, but I wasn't going to tell him that. And I just sat there and quietly, and he finished picking up his mementos and things he felt was his, and he left. And I listened and just waited. And I heard him go down the steps, down the steps, down the steps, and out the front door. And then a miracle happened. I was cured. I don't recommend the Spike cure for everybody who gets the flu, but it sure worked for me. I jumped out of bed, put on my shoes, wrote my girlfriend a quick message as to what had happened, climbed out the fire escape, jumped in my fire escape, climbed into my bedroom, got under the covers, and swore I would never, ever call in sick again. That weekend, she talked to Spike. She made it very clear, it's over. He went back to California. But ever since then, I've noticed that you don't see returnable beer bottles anymore. I think the breweries finally figured out that if you're leaving empty, smelly beer bottles around your apartment, God knows what kind of pests are going to show up. Thank you.
Tom, everybody.